So our character here is Dora, and she and some friends are intending to create a company. Well, let's just go back to the Companies Act for a little bit of quick revision. So in the Companies Act, we know that incorporation is set out from sections 10 through 20, and the first thing we're going to do is get ourselves a name. So we need the name to be reserved, and once we've managed to reserve a name, then we're going to have to go and file the various documents under section 10. So as we know, we need a name, which we applied for, a shareholder, director. We'll assume they all live in New Zealand, so we don't have any issues with that. Now, if we go back to the contents, then once we've gone through the process and the registrar has completed their work, then they're going to issue us with a certificate of incorporation, and that will give rise to our separate legal entity. So the certificate of incorporation is an essential point in time for our analysis, because that, as it's stated here, is conclusive evidence that all the requirements have been complied with, and the company on and after that date, from the date of incorporation, is incorporated under this Act. Therefore, that is the critical point in time at which we have a company. So if we go back to our friend Dora here, and we just let's put a timeline in this. So we'll call that our timeline. And the friends have their negotiations here. Then we have name is reserved. So we have our name application. Then our next issue will be we're going to file for incorporation. Just make this a wee bit smaller. Our next requirement is that the Registrar of Companies will then approve, and a certificate of incorporation is issued. Now you can see these certificates of incorporation on the Companies Office. Now, just make that a wee bit smaller. So we have these 3 points in time there, which are quite important. So this is simply the friends getting together and deciding we need a company. Then we do our name application. That gets approved, and we can file for our incorporation. And then the company's registrar will issue the certificate of incorporation, and now we have a company. Now, so down here we have a certificate of incorporation, and this one here, we'll just blow it up a wee bit. Picked one off the company site from a struck-off company called Z Limited. So this is a real company, and we'll just use theirs as an example. So all company certificates of incorporation can be found on the Companies Office website. So that's the birth of the company at that point. Now, the problem for Dora is that they want to get a factory for doing some work, and she finds an available factory. Now, she finds it here, and she wants to enter into a contract. So that contract is going to be between Dora and the company, and the factory owners, because the company doesn't yet exist, so that's not possible. You're going to have a contract between people who actually exist, so that's going to be Dora and the factory owners, and they'll enter a contract. But the company can't be party to that contract because it doesn't yet exist. Now, Dora can have this contract as a pre-incorporation contract. We'll just call it pre-incorp for current purposes. Now, she can do that, so we'll call this one a pre-incorporation contract and just put it on top of that. And what makes it a pre-incorporation contract? Now, to answer that, we need to make sure we follow the sections in the Companies Act on this particular area. So let's go through to pre-incorporation contracts, which are here from section 182 on. And the first part of this is, do we have a pre-incorporation contract? And the essential requirements is that it's a contract purporting to be made by a company before its incorporation, or by a person on behalf of a company before its incorporation. So in this particular example, it's not enough if it just says that. It must have something in there which makes it clear it's a pre-incorporation. So it could be for and of Z Limited to be incorporated. Now, if this is on the contract, then we most certainly have a pre-incorporation contract. Just to tidy it up, we'll take this out of there. So now we know that's a pre-incorporation contract complying with section 180. Now what's supposed to happen next? As we'll just get rid of all that. What's supposed to happen next, you'll see down here, is this contract may be ratified in such period as specified in the contract or within a reasonable time after incorporation of the company in the name of which or on behalf of which it has been made. So if we go back to our example here, what's going to happen is the company is formed. Then we're going to have a meeting of directors, and at this meeting the directors will have a resolution to ratify. And if they do that, then there's no problem. The contract has now become a contract of that company. Just make it a wee bit bigger. Now what would that look like? It'll be something like this. So here's a resolution. I'll just expand it for the moment so we can just see. Now in this resolution, we just say resolution of directors of Z Limited. And oops. Let's get them out of the way. So resolution of directors of Z Limited. And what are they actually doing? They are resolving here that the company is going to ratify down here. The company contemplated by the lease contract is ratified pursuant to section 182 of the Companies Act 1993. So we just pass a resolution, and this contract that Dora entered into has now become a contract of the company. So I'll bring that back down to a reasonable size. I'll put that resolution on canvas. So there's our resolution to ratify. Now this contract is in fact between this company, the lessee, and the incorporated company. So the directors have resolved. Now, strictly speaking, those lines are incorrect. They should be between the company and the party. So the directors have now resolved, and from here on, that's a company contract. And for the most part, Dora is quite safe. Now, we have some issues though with this. Now, the issues we have this revolve around a couple of problems. And that is that the company, meaning the directors, may not actually ratify the contract when it is formed, or it's also possible that the company is never formed. Now this is dealt with by the Companies Act in this section 182 and 183 under this heading warranties. So in here you'll see that in a pre-incorporation contract, I'll come back to that point separately, there's a warranty by the person who makes the contract that the company will be incorporated and the company will ratify it. So what that simply means is in our scenario here with Dora, we have a contract here, and that contract has, under section 183, implied terms in it. That the company will incorporate and will ratify. So that's what Dora is guaranteeing by signing this contract. Right, so that's put in by section 183. Now, if we look through further, the amount of damages recoverable, an action for breach of the warranty implied. So if those things don't happen, then that warranty has been breached, are the same as in an action against the company for breach by the company of the unperformed obligations. Now, if we go to our example here, this is a contract here which might be for 20 years. And if it's a 20-year contract and it's $50,000 a year, that's $1 million over that time. And so the loss to that party could be significant if they can't get another tenant. And this person here, Dora, is the one guaranteeing it, so she is going to be personally liable on it. Now, Section 183 does give her the possibility to get out of this, and that is here. So in there it says, unless a contrary intention is expressed in the contract, meaning that she can actually contract out of this by putting a term in the contract, which would simply say, it allows me to do it, let's say the signatory shall have no personal liability. And that would do it. And if she did that, then she's absolutely safe. Whether anybody on the other side of a contract would sign that is highly debatable. However, it is a possibility for Dora to be safe in this circumstance and escape the consequences of both of those things: the contract not being formed, or the company failing to ratify this. So it's a very good idea to put those in, but that's a negotiation with the other party. So Section 83 means it's possible for this party here to sue Dora, but they do have another option. They can go to the court and they can ask the court to force the company, if it is ratified, if it is formed, to actually ratify it. That's right, a party to a pre-incorporation contract not being ratified by the company, so it still has to be formed. The court can direct the company to return property, give other relief, or actually validate the contract. So that's an option to force them to go ahead with the contract if they don't want to. Now, this leaves us with a scenario, which was our first scenario if we go back a couple of pages, and that is that things have all happened as they should and the company has ratified it and the company still continues. But what if there's a breach of contract? So we have a breach of contract by the company. Can Dora still be sued? Now clearly the company can be sued, but can Dora be sued in these circumstances? And the answer to that is yes, but it's very unusual, and the yes comes from Section 185. So if it was shown breach of a proceeding breach of a contract which has been ratified, the court may, if it considers it just and equitable, make an order against the person by whom the contract was made. Now the key thing here is the contract has been ratified by the company, so you can sue the company, but let's say the company has no money and Dora misled the other party, then it might be just and equitable to make Dora, who's that person, liable under the contract. And that is the final scenario which could potentially happen with pre-incorporation contracts. Okay, so let's just summarize with an overview diagram. So we start with a pre-incorporation contract. And our first question is the company actually formed? If the answer is no, then under Section 183, Dora is liable, but also under Section 183, Dora could have had a clause in the contract to exclude her liability. Now the other option is the company's formed, yes. The company must ratify. If it doesn't ratify, then we simply have the same issue and Dora is liable, but again she could have removed that liability. The other option is the other party takes us to court and asks the court to enforce it. If the company does ratify, which is what we'd expect to happen, then the company is 99% of the time liable for breach, but in rare circumstances where it's just and equitable, where there's been a misleading by the person promoting or there was never any realistic probability of carrying out the contract, the court could make that party liable. Okay, so that summarizes pre-incorporation contracts, and we'll just finish off here with a picture of a hippo.